yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you've done, what you're doing.
Okay, thank you, Austin. So my name's Kevin. I publish my zombie fiction under the name Grivante, and currently I have my main series is the Z Brothers Zombie Exterminators, and I've released 2 books in that series, plus a couple of short stories, including the new, it's the origin of the Z Brothers in the Undead Worlds anthology. And I've also released another anthology, a horror anthology called Mashed, which combines food, sex, horror, and humor. So it's got a little bit of everything.
So all the good stuff is in there, though.
Yeah, all sorts of good stuff is in there. And then I've got a number of other projects. I'm right now in the process of putting together a new comic book. It's in the Z Brothers universe. It's called Zombie Buffet, and it's a mad scientists or evil scientists experiment on what happens if you give a zombie all it can eat. And it turned out really well. The artist did an amazing job, and I'm looking forward to releasing that here hopefully soon.
Yeah, that one sounds interesting.
It's primarily just focusing on one experiment. So she's done a lot of different experiments. In fact, she's the character that's featured in my story in the Undead Worlds anthology. In that one, she's working on perfecting her zombie virus. In this particular, in the comic book, she's already perfected the virus, and now she's trying different experiments, and that story only has to do with what happens when you feed them as much as they could possibly eat.
Yeah,
so,
cool.
Because we all see all the shows, movies, books, etc. They love to eat human flesh, but usually the flesh is getting devoured by multiple people all at once. There's never an opportunity for them to just keep eating. So I was like, what does that look like? How does that end?
Yeah, it's interesting.
And the artist did a great job with the gore factor and just kind of bringing it all together for me.
So do you primarily write comics, or do you also write novels?
Gotcha. So originally when I wrote the first Z Brothers book, I wanted to turn it into a graphic novel. I have a long history in comic books. I've been reading them and buying and selling them since I was a teenager. And I went through the whole process of interviewing artists, hired an artist. We started production on the first comic. About 12 pages in, he just up and quit. And at that point, I'd invested several months, and I just couldn't see myself going backwards and starting over again or trying to find somebody to take off from there. So I went back and I redid the book into a novel. It's a short book, more of a novella, and decided to release it that way. I have released the 12 pages that were completed as a mini comic. Kind of introduces the story, and I have that out. It's on various formats. I even have a little mini print version of that available. And I'll probably do more comics in the future. I guess I'm kind of a hybrid. I do the novels, I do the comics, and with the Z Brothers in particular, just because of the way it's developed, I'm going to have a little of both.
Okay. If I remember right, it was you who kind of turned me on to the animated writers. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So when I first released the first Z Brothers book in 2015, and I think like most new authors in the indie world, we put our book out there and then we're like, well, why isn't it selling like hotcakes? Why hasn't everybody recognized my greatness? And I spent the next year doing conventions and learning, joining different Facebook groups and kind of learning about the indie author publishing process. And recognize that the best way to get your book out there, the word out there, is to network with other authors. From small to large, they've all got different skills, different audiences. And I in particularly write fairly slowly because I have a lot going on in life. I really only do about 1 book a year. And so in order to kind of feed those people that like my work, I needed to find other authors to work with that I can say, hey, here, check out this book. Here's another author whose book that you might like. It's similar to mine, or it was just a great read. So I formed this group with the idea of just finding other authors that write zombie fiction. And we started that kind of around the beginning of the year with just a handful of people. It's now grown to almost 200. And we've done, I don't know, 5 or 6 different promos together where we do either big giveaways or just discounts on our books. We formed a Facebook group just for fans, for all the authors to interact with the fans. A number of us, 22 of us, came together to produce Undead Worlds, the anthology I mentioned. And that anthology basically features brand new stories from each author. Most of them are sneak peeks or new stories in their worlds. that introduce readers to what those authors are all about. And yeah, the group's just been great. There's been a lot of authors that have stepped up, participated, and working together either directly with myself or with others to do projects, and it's been a really good time.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I've been trying to dip my toe in that kind of, I don't know if it's referred to as the same for a novel. Do they still call them anthologies?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, mostly I'm a comic book writer. I started writing way young, but it was just kind of something I liked doing, and it was never anything I really took seriously until I had this idea for the comic I'm writing now. And I'm sure you know, it's one of those ideas that just pesters you into completing it. You just
Yeah.
can't put it down. Your mind's always thinking about it. You're coming up with ideas, and it's just all a waste if you don't actually sit down and like work on it. But yeah, there's like a handful of anthologies coming up that I'm looking to try to play a part in. Just the idea that the networking you can do, you meet so many different creators. An anthology that I kind of watched the progress of without being a part of it. It was Monsters and Other Scary Shit, I think is what it was called. And it was just a monster anthology, so it was cool. They had some stories of like Sesame Street type characters. Like there was like a Sesame Street type Muppet that was getting drunk at a bar. He had problems in his life. There was another one where a damsel would meet every night with a dragon and play games and have fun. And knights would come try to rescue her, and she was like, "Dude, no, we're like having a good time." And then the dragon, of course, would end up roasting them or killing them, and they would go back to playing their game. And it was just fun to kind of see that develop, and I think over 50 contributors were on that book. Yeah, so I just imagining 50 different audiences all being pulled to one spot. It's just a really powerful thing if you can try to be a part of it, to be a part of it. So I'm looking forward to jumping into an anthology. I don't know if you're into H.P. Lovecraft, but there's a Cthulhu. It's called Cthulhu is Hard to Spell. It's more less of a theme about Cthulhu and more of a theme about the old gods in general. All of them. Cthulhu is just one of them. So I picked one. I've kind of been formulating an idea. I should really push myself into scripting because I'll formulate idea into the grave. Like if I don't actually jump and start writing a script, I'll just plan it all out forever.
And are you writing a comic for those anthologies, or are you writing a story?
Yeah. They're comic book anthologies. So I'd be writing a comic. And honestly, like when I first decided to write my comic book, I dove head first. I researched like crazy. I mean, I was just consumed. Actually, a little bit about me is I used to be in sales in California, and it was just, I'm not a big sales guy. I wasn't always happy with what I was doing. And the thing I liked most about that job was just getting to talk with people. I'm a huge people person. I like finding out about them, what they're doing, what they've got going on, what they know that I might not know and could learn from them, stuff like that. But eventually it just got too much and the ideas were accumulating and nothing was being done with them. So I actually quit my job to work on my comic full time, which was a fun decision to make, a scary decision to experience. But the more research I did, the more comfortable I felt, the more confident I got. And there's so many other people out there trying to do it too, that there's just this community of people who are kind of trying to boost everybody up. And I kind of wanted to do the same. For you, when you have an idea that pops into your head, what do you do to prepare the idea ready for scripting?
Gotcha. So for the most part, when I get the initial idea, I just run with it. The Z Brothers came out of a short story idea. I just sat down. I needed to write. Didn't really have any direction or idea on where I was going. Started writing about this exterminator that showed up at this guy's house, who had called because he had heard strange noises in his basement. And I just followed the idea until all of a sudden I found out his house was infested with zombies. After I got to that point, I'm like, okay, where is this going? It's humorous, it's interesting, but at that particular moment, I didn't really know. So then I took the kernel of the idea and started brainstorming, following more of a narrative arc at that point. Where do I want this story to go? Kind of took it from the moment of insanity that it all begins with, that I found the most interesting, and then I map it out from there. And oftentimes when I write, I'll either know how something begins or how it ends, and then I spend a fair amount of time just outlining, structuring it, putting in the pieces of the story arc from the beginning to the incident that happens to the climax, and just building the different pieces of the story from there.
As far as arcs, how do you go about like figuring out how to make a good arc?
Good question. I admittedly, when I first started writing, didn't give a lot of thought to arc other than beginning, middle, end. And the characters in my first book, they don't change much. And really the book is fairly short. They're just on an adventure. But then as I started mapping out where does this series go, I had to look at, where are my characters at now? Where do I want them to go? What message am I trying to share with the world? And that's kind of where I build each of my character arcs. It's like, I think in my perspective anyway, there's always a little bit of me in every character I write, either a piece of me that I like, a piece of me that I don't like, or a piece of me that I want to change. And so I take a look at that character and say, okay, what is it about them that I identify with? And then where do I want them to go? And then how do I get there? And so, of course, you've got so many variables in a story, especially with zombies, do they even live to the end? I don't know. And so anyway, I map it out from there. I say, okay, they're going to go through this, they're going to go through that, and they're going to go through this, and that's going to get them to where I want to show them in the end. That all these experiences that I just put them through transformed them, and they took it and became this.
So I'm sure you have lots of advice for someone who's just starting out. Specifically because the next thing I'll be doing is building an audience. Like once you know what your story is, you can start building an audience around that topic or genre.
Right.
But specifically with you, I'd like to talk about any advice you have for someone who's just beginning, has an idea, and it's all that stuff before they can actually sit down and then do the scripting.
So, there's tons of advice out there, and that's always the trick. It doesn't always work for everybody. What's worked for me, what's worked for you may or may not work for somebody else. I think the most important thing for somebody that's just getting started is to learn about the craft of writing, read books about writing, read good authors, people that are tried and true. Stephen King, of course, is an obvious one. There's tons of big names. If you're going after a particular genre, like say zombies, for instance, since that's what we're talking about, go look at the top of the Amazon charts, see who the top 10 authors are, start picking up those books and reading them. Get familiar with the genre. What are people doing in it today? How is your story going to be different from their story? And I guess one piece is you don't want to tell a story that's already been told. From a new author's perspective, how are you going to do it differently? Either you've got to do what's been done really, really good to stand out, or you've got to do something new. And that, for myself, there's tons of great zombie authors out there. Like in our group, we've got over 190, and that's just a fraction of the authors that are out there writing in zombie fiction. So I said, there's tons of people out there doing this great zombie post-apocalyptic fiction. Could I write one? Yeah, I think so. But I'm going to go off in this totally other opposite, zany, crazy direction because for me, I'm doing something new and different within the genre. So it's learning what's going on in the genre so that you can decide what path is best for you. I guess that's what I boil all that down to as far as advice that I would give somebody that's just starting out.
What I like to do is, depending on what I'm working on, I'll look up books or even TV. Like when I was first conceptualizing the idea for Bud, I watched a lot of Z Nation, a lot of Walking Dead. iZombie I was kind of a holdout. I don't know. Do you like those shows? You ever watch those?
I have not watched iZombie. I have watched Santa Clarita Diet, but I haven't watched iZombie yet.
Yeah, iZombie was one of those I pushed off. It just seemed too like a money grab into the genre. Like, are they actually zombies? Because she can like walk around and stuff. I really got into Z Nation though. I love Z Nation. It's just I love how they explore all the things that never get explored. Like there's the guys that sell the weapons and how they set up that big competition where you could win the big gun. And that guy, he in a different episode, he campaigns across the U.S. for the presidency during the zombie apocalypse.
Right.
And it's just cool things like that you don't really think of when you watch things like The Walking Dead, because it's even as popular as that is, it's really just about the zombies and the people who try to take advantage of the weak in that situation. Yeah. And even now, it's not really about the zombies anymore.
No.
It seems like as it goes on, it's less and less about the zombies, which if they're going for the realism, which it seems like they are, it makes sense. You know, if you watch from season one, like watch an episode in season one and then watch one in the last season that just aired, and you'll see just how different the zombies look. Like they're actually decomposing throughout the different seasons.
Yeah.
And if you go the realistic route, they're not going to be around for very long.
Well,
sometimes as a writer, you got to figure out what rules are you going to break. Like, are you going to have cars that run on gasoline? Because gasoline only lasts for like what 2-3 years, something like that.
Yeah, tops.
So it's fun to find those things that, like you said, you're going to do different for your comic.
Yeah. I actually heard somewhere that the title The Walking Dead actually refers to the humans, not the zombies, because they're constantly having to flee, and they're just, you know, they're trying to survive. They're all basically dead. Yeah. So.
Yeah, they're no longer living. They're just surviving.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I never thought to look at it that way. That's pretty cool. So how about just give you the time to talk about what you've got going on. You can promote what you want to promote. If you have some author friends that you'd like to support them by shouting out their books and where you can find them, stuff like that, just go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay, well, great. Thank you for that. You know, probably the biggest thing I'd want to promote is the Reanimated Writers group, because there's so many great authors in there. And if you go on Facebook, it's Reanimated Writers, Authors, and Fans group. You can find it on there. Join that group. There's lots of authors that participate in the group. They post information about their books. The Undead Worlds anthology is a great place to start, not only for my own work, but for all these other authors. With folks like Valerie Ludis, Shelley Blaylock, David Simpson, Christopher Artinian. You go on and on with naming names. There's a lot of great authors in the group, and they create a lot of great content, a lot of great stories. If you're a fan of zombie fiction, that's definitely the place to start. For myself, I'm currently in the process of writing book 3 in the Z Brothers series, which is called Halloween Holocaust. And one of the things with my characters, so it takes place in modern times. There is no apocalypse. I'm a big believer in it'd be really hard for zombies to get out of control unless a worldwide event happens, which you do see a lot of in zombie fiction. But if it were just a bug that spreads, I just don't see it getting out of control very easily, unless they're fast, which is a whole other conversation. I think if there were fast zombies, we'd all be dead and it's game over. But for slow zombies, it's going to take quite a bit. So the Z Brothers deal with those uprisings when they happen. If there's an outbreak in their neck of the woods, they're based in Arizona, they go and deal with it. And the one holiday they hate is Halloween, because people dress up as zombies. And if they're out on a call on Halloween night, there is an incident they allude to where they did almost kill somebody accidentally because they were dressed up as a zombie. So they hate that. But in book 3, they end up having to go out on Halloween. And
okay, cool.
Yeah, so they're kind of faced with that of, you know, am I about to shoot somebody that's a zombie, or is this guy going to kill me because I hesitate too long? And all sorts of craziness goes on. And that book will be out sometime next year. And then again, I've got the Zombie Buffet mini comic, which deals with the villain of their story, the villain in their universe, Dr. Nitzau, and her zombie experiments. And right now, I'm still setting up the backstory for her. She's primarily a character in books 3 and book 4, which will be the last book in the series. And so book 3 will be out in 2018. Book 4 will probably be out in 2019, sooner if I can get them done. But life is pretty full and busy in my world, so. Next year, we probably will do an Undead Worlds 2. So we'll be looking for authors to join that are interested in working together.
Okay, well, great. I appreciate you taking the time to talk.